I have spent 32 years as a cardiologist. I have sat across from thousands of seniors in my consulting room. I have read their blood pressure logs. I have reviewed their echocardiograms. I've held their hands in hospital corridors after strokes that should never have happened. And the same mistake keeps showing up over and over and over again. Not a diet mistake, not a medication mistake, a reading mistake. A belief that was planted in people's minds decades ago and that the medical system has never fully corrected that is quietly putting seniors on a path towards stroke, heart failure, and irreversible organ damage right now. The belief is this, that the bottom number is the dangerous one. And if you are over 60 and checking your blood pressure at home, there is a real possibility that belief is the most dangerous thing in your house. Because in 32 years of cardiology, the patients I worry about most are not the ones with dramatically alarming readings. They are the ones who look at a reading like 164/72 and feel calm. The ones who see 158/76 and say to themselves, well, the bottom number looks fine. Those are the patients who end up in my office years too late. My name is Dr. James Carter. I'm a cardiologist with 32 years of clinical practice. I have dedicated my career to one specific area of medicine, the heart. Not general health, not wellness advice, the heart. And what I am about to tell you is something I wish every senior could hear directly from their own cardiologist, but most never will. Today, I am going to tell you which blood pressure number is actually most dangerous for seniors over 60, why everything you were taught about this is outdated, and the 3 patterns I see in my cardiology practice that most doctors never explain clearly. Stay with me, because by the time this video ends, you will never look at your blood pressure monitor the same way again. I want about Margaret. Margaret was 69 when she first came to my office, retired school teacher, meticulous, the kind of woman who kept a written log of her blood pressure readings going back 18 months, a small green notebook, entries in blue ink, every single morning before breakfast. When I opened that notebook, I saw the same pattern repeating for over a year, 162/74, 158/72, 166/70. She'd written notes in the margin. Bottom number always fine. Doctor says watch it. Feeling okay. What Margaret did not know, what nobody had told her clearly, was that the bottom number being fine was not protecting her. The top number was quietly damaging every major organ in her body, beat by beat, day by day, for 18 months. 3 weeks after that first appointment, Margaret called my office from an emergency room. She had been folding laundry when her left arm went suddenly weak. Her words became thick for about 45 seconds. Then everything came back to normal. She almost did not call anyone. She told me later, I thought it passed, so I thought it was nothing. What she had experienced was a transient ischemic attack, a warning stroke, and her blood pressure log had been telling the truth the entire time. She had simply been reading the wrong number. If you have ever looked at your own readings and told yourself the bottom number looks fine, keep watching, because what comes next changes everything. Tell me in the comments right now, which number have you been watching most on your blood pressure monitor? The top or the bottom? I read every comment on this channel. For decades, the medical world focused heavily on the diastolic, the bottom number, as the primary danger signal. Generations of patients were taught that the bottom number was the one to fear. For younger adults, that was not entirely wrong, but the physiology of aging changes everything, and mainstream medicine was painfully slow to communicate that change to the patients it affects most. If your doctor is still spending more time discussing your diastolic pressure than your systolic, and you are over 60, you are not getting the full picture. The clinical understanding shifted over the last 2 decades. The guidelines caught up, but the conversation in the exam room never did. I watched that gap cost Margaret a warning stroke. I have watched it cost others far more. Let me show you exactly why. Think about a brand new garden hose, flexible, forgiving. When the pressure rises, the hose walls expand slightly and absorb the force. Now leave that same hose outside for 10 years. Sun, heat, time. It becomes stiff and brittle. When pressure rises now, the walls cannot expand. The force travels straight through, uncushioned. Your arteries do exactly this over time. The elastic walls that softened every heartbeat at 40 are gradually stiffening at 65, 70, 75. When your heart pumps now, the pressure wave hits harder and drives the top number, the systolic, higher. The bottom number may stay flat or begin drifting lower. This is not a malfunction. It is arterial aging. And the pattern it creates, a rising top number with a normal or low bottom number, is so common in seniors that it has its own clinical name, isolated systolic hypertension. The most common form of high blood pressure in older adults, also the most consistently dismissed. In my cardiology practice, a top number sitting persistently above 140, even with a perfectly acceptable bottom number, is something I address from the first visit, every single time, because I have seen what happens when it is left to climb. Margaret's notebook had been showing me 162, 166, 164 for 18 months. Her arteries had been under that strain every minute of every one of those days, and her margin note that said, "Feeling okay," had been telling the most dangerous kind of truth, the truth that gives you permission to wait. Now, here's what I need you to understand before we go further. What I just told you is the most important long-term truth about blood pressure after 60, but it is not the complete truth. If I stopped here, I would be leaving you with a picture that is still dangerously incomplete. There is a second pattern that does not unfold over months, one that can become life-threatening within the hour, and a third pattern, the most deceptive of all, that hides behind numbers that look almost beautiful. Stay with me. The emergency and the over-medication trap. If you are watching this and realizing you have been misreading your own numbers, subscribe right now. I spent 32 years telling patients the truth in a consulting room. Now, I do it here. I want to tell you about Raymond. Raymond was 73, former engineer, the kind of man who trusted data and did not rattle easily. One morning, he woke with a headache behind both eyes. Not his usual headache, something different that he could not name. He sat at his kitchen table, wrapped the cuff around his arm, and got 192 over 116. He waited 5 minutes, checked again, 188 over 119. Then his vision blurred in his right eye. Raymond almost talked himself out of calling for help. He told me, "I kept thinking it will come back down. It always does." But something made him pick up the phone. That instinct may have saved his life. What Raymond was experiencing is a hypertensive emergency. A reading above 180 systolic or above 120 diastolic, especially with symptoms: chest pain, shortness of breath, sudden weakness or numbness, trouble speaking, vision changes, severe headache, confusion. Any of those symptoms combined with a reading in that range is not a wait-and-see situation. That is the moment you call for emergency help immediately. I am telling you directly, I have seen what happens when patients delay at that threshold. The outcomes can be catastrophic and permanent. Now, I need to tell you something that almost no blood pressure video ever says. Something I have started saying publicly because seniors deserve to hear it. The aggressive push to lower blood pressure numbers is correct in principle, but in older patients, it has created a second crisis that is not being discussed loudly enough. This is what happened to Walter. Walter was 78, retired, diligent. He took every medication exactly as prescribed, and his numbers looked excellent on paper. 124 over 54, 122 over 56, 126 over 52. His previous cardiologist sent him home with a thumbs up, but Walter felt like he was disappearing. He was dizzy the moment he stood up from the sofa. He gripped the bathroom wall every morning in the shower. He had started walking with one hand trailing along the hallway furniture, not because of his legs, but because the floor felt unreliable beneath him. His family assumed it was age. When Walter first sat across from me, I looked straight at his bottom number: 54, 56, 52. The coronary arteries, the ones that feed the heart muscle itself, receive most of their blood supply during diastole, during the pause between heartbeats when the heart is resting. If the diastolic pressure drops too low, the heart may not be getting what it needs between each beat. In a 78-year-old with arteries that have already narrowed and stiffened, that is not a small problem. A diastolic number consistently below 60 in a senior on blood pressure medication, especially with Walter's symptoms, is not a victory. It is a warning wearing a trophy. I adjusted his medications carefully over 6 weeks. His dizziness resolved. His grip on the hallway furniture relaxed. He told me at his next visit, "I forgot what it felt like to just walk across a room." The goal of blood pressure management is never to win a number contest. The goal is to protect the heart, protect the brain, and preserve the safety and independence of daily life. Lower is not always better. Safer is always better. In seniors over 60, those two things are not always the same: the wide pulse pressure and the final descent. There is one more pattern, the third one, and I want you to pay close attention because this is the one that fools even the most careful, attentive seniors. I want to tell you about Evelyn. Evelyn was 82, still driving herself to her Tuesday book club, still cooking from scratch every Sunday for her son's family. She came to me not because she felt dramatically ill, but because something had been quietly stealing from her for months. She had started leaving the book club early because her legs felt heavy on the walk back to the car. She had stopped taking the stairs at her son's house, telling herself it was just being sensible. She had given up her evening walks without ever making a conscious decision to stop. Life had quietly contracted around her, and she had barely noticed it happening. When I looked at her blood pressure log, the numbers seemed almost reassuring: 168 over 58, 172 over 60, 166 over 56. Her son looked at those numbers and said, "The bottom number looks great though, right?" I turned the logbook to face him. I said, "Do not look at the numbers themselves. Look at the gap between them. 110 points. A healthy pulse pressure, the difference between your top and bottom reading, sits around 40 points at rest. When that gap pushes past 60, past 70, past 100, that widening distance is the arterial walls telling you something critical. It means the arteries have lost their elasticity so completely that the heart pumps and nothing cushions the force going out and nothing absorbs it coming back. The systolic climbs, the diastolic drifts lower, and the gap between them becomes a map of the damage accumulating inside. Evelyn had not been slowing down because she was 82. She had been slowing down because her cardiovascular system was under sustained, unaddressed strain. And the number she had been watching, the bottom number, which looked beautiful, had been pointing her in exactly the wrong direction. Now, let me close with something I've wanted to say clearly for a long time. The standard treatment threshold, 140 over 90, is not truth. It is a starting framework. Applying it without accounting for arterial stiffness, fall history, diastolic behavior, and individual tolerance is not precision medicine. It is guesswork wearing a white coat. The most current cardiology thinking has moved toward individualized targets in older adults, precisely because the evidence shows that chasing universal numbers in a 75 or 78-year-old body creates as much harm as it prevents. But that thinking rarely makes it from the journals into the conversation with the patient. So here are the 3 truths I carry from 32 years of practice. First, the top number is usually the strongest long-term warning signal after 60. Persistently above 140 on top deserves serious attention, regardless of what the bottom number looks like. Do not let a calm bottom number silence a climbing top number. Second, above 180 over 120 with any symptom is a potential emergency. Do not wait. Do not rationalize. Seek help immediately. Third, a bottom number falling below 60 in a senior on medication, especially with dizziness or unsteadiness, is a warning in the opposite direction. And a widening gap between your two numbers is a signal from your arteries. Do not ignore it because the individual numbers look acceptable. Your blood pressure monitor is not giving you two numbers. It is giving you a clinical picture. A pattern that tells you whether your arteries are stiffening, whether your heart is under strain, whether your treatment is balanced, and whether your body is moving toward a crisis or away from one. Margaret's green notebook was full of the right information. She was reading the wrong column. Walter's numbers looked like success. His body was sending a completely different message. Evelyn's bottom number looked beautiful. The gap between her numbers was the truth. The seniors who stay safest are not the ones who track the most readings. They are the ones who understand what the pattern means, who bring the full picture to their doctor, not just the number from this morning, but the trend, the symptoms, the story those two numbers are telling together. If this video changed how you see your own monitor, share it with one person over 60 who still believes a good bottom number means they are protected. That belief is in millions of homes right now, and in too many of them, it is the most dangerous thing on the kitchen counter. I'm Dr. James Carter. I have 32 years of cardiology, every day of it spent trying to give people the truth their bodies deserve. I'll see you in the next video.